Welcome to today's deep dive. Today is Tuesday, March 10th, 2026, and we are so glad you're joining us.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
We are tackling a subject today that, honestly, it impacts absolutely anyone working in a modern organization.
Yeah.
Whether you're, leading a small creative team, managing a massive global division, or just trying to navigate your own career path, you are going to want to hear this.
Oh, sure. It's incredibly relevant.
Right. So we're looking at a massive new research paper by Dr. Jonathan H. Westover. It's called The CEO Paradox, Leading Transformation and Trust in 2026.
Which I know sounds a bit academic.
Yeah, exactly. The title's a little dense, but the insights here are incredible. He essentially took a mountain of data to figure out exactly what the most successful leaders are doing differently right now.
Right.
Can you give us a sense of the sheer scale of this research before we get into it?
I'd be happy to. So the foundation of this research is PwC's 29th Global CEO Survey.
Okay.
And we are talking about highly detailed, on-the-ground insights from over 4,450 executives.
Wow.
Yeah, spread across 95 different countries.
Yeah.
So this isn't just theory. It's a very real snapshot of global leadership in 2026.
Which is a pretty chaotic moment.
Exactly. It's a moment entirely defined by accelerating technological shifts and, well, unprecedented global complexity.
Yeah. And the core mission of our deep dive today is to unpack what Dr. Westover calls the CEO attention crisis.
The ultimate modern leadership dilemma.
Right. And through this data, we're going to discover why, in a highly volatile world, playing it safe and trying to protect what you have is actually counterintuitively the most dangerous strategic move an organization can possibly make.
I love that framing.
Yeah. And to help us visualize this tension, the research uses this absolutely perfect analogy right at the beginning. It says leaders today are constantly forced to choose between looking through a microscope and looking through a telescope.
The microscope versus the telescope.
Exactly. The microscope represents those immediate short-term burning fires, things like a suddenly exposed cyber vulnerability or a macroeconomic swing or maybe a localized supply chain hiccup.
Right, the stuff right in front of your face.
Yeah. And the telescope, on the other hand, that represents the long-term, multi-year transformative opportunities. The telescope is what actually determines if your company will even exist in 10 years.
It perfectly captures the temporal tension leaders face every single day.
Yeah.
And to set the stakes for you, the listener, the data shows that executive confidence in 12-month revenue growth has absolutely plummeted.
Really? Like how much?
Well, back in 2022, 56% of executives were highly confident in their short-term growth. Today, in 2026, that number has collapsed to just 30%.
Oh, wow. That's almost half.
It's a massive erosion of confidence. And because they're panicked about the short term, leaders are currently spending an astonishing 47% of their time staring exclusively through that microscope.
Nearly half their time.
They're dedicating almost half their working hours to issues that span less than a single year.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I want to be fair to these leaders.
Yeah.
The immediate threats are genuinely scary. Really.
Oh, absolutely.
The threat landscape has evolved so much just in the last couple of years. I know cyber threats are always a concern, but did the survey show if leaders are actually more worried about it now than they used to be?
They are significantly more worried. The data shows that 31% of organizations now feel highly or extremely exposed to cyber threats in the coming year.
Okay.
That's up from 21% just 2 years ago. Cyber risk is basically tied with macroeconomic volatility as the #1 thing keeping leaders awake at night.
Makes sense.
But when you dig into the geographic breakdown of that fear, you find an incredibly revealing psychological quirk.
Oh.
Yeah. German executives, for example, report a 34% high or extreme exposure to cyber threats.
Yeah.
But their counterparts in the UK report only a 16% high exposure.
Wait, hold on. I want to push back on that for a second.
Go for it.
Are German companies actually getting hacked twice as often as UK companies? Like, what's driving that massive gap?
That is the fascinating part. They aren't.
They aren't.
No. The actual objective incident rates of cyber attacks in both countries are nearly identical.
That is wild. So it means the fear isn't just about the actual mathematical risk, it's about the cultural or organizational anxiety surrounding the risk?
Precisely. And we see the exact same phantom anxiety when it comes to global tariffs.
Really?
Yeah. 1 in 5 executives globally tell researchers they are terrified of tariff-related financial losses. If you look at Mexico, that fear spikes to 35% of executives.
Which you'd expect given trade dynamics.
Right. But when the researchers actually ask them to do the math on their own supply chains,
Yeah.
60% of those very same executives admitted they expect little to no actual impact on their profit margins.
You're kidding.
They're terrified of a ghost.
Which leads to a massive aha moment in the research.
Exactly.
When these executives get spooked by a geopolitical conflict or these perceived, almost ghostly macroeconomic threats, they pull back. They go into a defensive posture, they freeze hiring, they delay upgrading their technology, they completely back away from strategic acquisitions.
Right, they turtle up.
Yeah. But by retreating to protect themselves from a perceived decline, they actually trigger the exact decline they were afraid of. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Let's look at the hard numbers on that because they are staggering.
Hit me.
The companies led by these cautious defensive executives actually underperformed their more dynamic, forward-looking peers by 2 full percentage points in revenue growth
Whoa.
and 3 percentage points in profit margins.
3 points in profit margin is huge.
In the corporate world, a 3% difference in profit margin is the gap between a company that is thriving and one that is preparing for layoffs.
Yeah.
It really invites you to look at your own behavior, doesn't it? Think about your own day-to-day decisions. Where in your own work, or even your life, are you letting perceived threats constrain your strategic actions? Are you playing not to lose instead of playing to win?
That is a brilliant question for everyone listening to keep in mind, because nothing separates the organization's playing to win from the rest of the pack, quite like artificial intelligence.
Oh, without a doubt.
Look, everybody is talking about AI. It is inescapable. But the data here is pretty sobering. Isn't it true that most companies aren't actually making any money off it yet?
That is entirely true. More than half of these surveyed executives admit they haven't seen a single dollar of revenue gain or cost reduction from all their massive AI investments.
So it's just hype for them?
For the majority, it is just what we call innovation theater. Buying software to look cutting edge without actually changing how the business operates.
Right.
However, there is an elite group making up about 12% of the surveyed organizations that the research labels the AI vanguard, and they are absolutely crushing it.
So what are that 12% doing differently? Because I imagine they aren't just handing everyone a ChatGPT account and hoping for the best.
Not at all.
Yeah.
They execute across 4 very specific foundational pillars:
Okay.
technology integration, strategic roadmaps, risk management, and cultural enablement.
Got it.
The research provides some fantastic case studies for how this actually looks in practice. Let's start with technology integration.
Okay, lay it on me.
Deutsche Bank realized early on that you cannot build next-generation lightning-fast AI on outdated legacy computer systems.
Right.
So starting way back in 2019, they undertook a massive, highly complex migration, moving 45% of their core applications to the cloud by 2024.
That sounds like unglamorous plumbing work.
It is entirely unglamorous, but that digital plumbing created the foundation that allowed them to securely deploy generative AI across their customer service and risk assessment divisions.
Which paid off.
Massively. It began paying huge dividends in operational efficiency by late 2025. You have to build the roads before you can drive the sports car.
That makes perfect sense. And that leads into the second pillar, strategic roadmaps. Unilever is the standout example here, right? Because they didn't just try to force AI into every department all at once.
Correct. They sequenced their deployment very deliberately. They started in the one place where the math was clearest: the supply chain.
Smart.
By applying AI to demand forecasting, they cut forecast errors by 30%. That is a massive cost saving. And once they had that undeniable win, they took that momentum and confidence and moved into marketing personalization and finally into product innovation. They proved the value step by step.
But moving that fast has to be dangerous. What about the third pillar, risk management?
Right.
How do you prevent an AI model from hallucinating or making a heavily biased decision that gets the company sued?
The vanguard organizations build in heavy guardrails. JP Morgan Chase is the gold standard here. They created a centralized AI ethics committee.
Okay.
And this wasn't just a group of executives writing polite suggestion memos. They gave this committee a literal stop button.
A stop button.
If an AI model showed any issues with fairness, bias, or lack of transparency, this committee could immediately halt its deployment.
Wow.
Having formalized governance like that actually allows an organization to move much faster because the engineers know they have fully functional brakes.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The fourth pillar, cultural enablement. Because you can have the best cloud infrastructure and the smartest ethics committee in the world, but none of it matters if your human employees refuse to use the tools.
Exactly.
Walmart's approach to this absolutely blew my mind. They systematically trained 500,000 workers Everyone from store associates to corporate staff in AI fluency.
That scale is incredible.
It is. But training alone doesn't overcome human resistance.
No, it doesn't. If you're a busy store manager, new software often just feels like a burden that slows you down.
So Walmart changed the incentive. They actually altered the performance metrics for their store managers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, their financial bonuses were directly tied to customer service improvements that were driven by using AI to optimize inventory and staffing. They didn't just ask their managers to embrace the future, they literally paid them to do it.
It's a textbook example of aligning human motivation with technological capability.
Yep.
And this concept of aggressively pushing boundaries
Yeah.
naturally leads into another major theme from the research: the complete blurring of traditional industry boundaries.
Whoa, I wanted to talk about this.
Yeah. The organizations that are aggressively expanding across completely different sectors are enjoying profit margins 5 percentage points higher than their peers who just stay in their traditional lane.
The boundaries are totally evaporating. I mean, look at Amazon.
Right.
Most people still think of them as the everything store for retail and maybe cloud computing. But in 2022, they bought One Medical.
A huge pivot.
They essentially looked at the market and said, we are excellent at complex logistics, and we have massive built-in consumer trust, so we're going to use those tools to fix your fragmented healthcare access.
Yep.
Or look at the auto industry. Why are BMW and Ford suddenly partnering with energy providers and insurance companies?
Because you aren't just buying a piece of metal with an engine anymore. You're buying into a comprehensive mobility, energy, and insurance ecosystem. It's a profound shift in how we define a product. The survey actually notes that 44% of planned major acquisitions over the next 3 years are completely outside the buyer's current sector.
Wow. Almost half.
And a big part of this strategy is a concept called acqui-hiring.
Can you break down what acqui-hiring actually means for the folks listening?
Certainly. It's essentially when a massive company buys a smaller company, not necessarily because they want the smaller company's customer base, but because they want to absorb their incredibly talented, specialized staff.
I see.
Microsoft does this brilliantly. When they bought LinkedIn, they were buying an ocean of B2B relationship data to fuel their enterprise software.
Right.
When they acquired Nuance Communications, they weren't just buying market share. They were buying highly specialized healthcare AI and voice recognition engineers.
You're buying the talent.
Exactly. You buy the specific human capability you lack, rather than wasting 5 years trying to build it from scratch in an area where you have no expertise.
But having these grand, boundary-pushing ideas is only half the battle. The research points out a glaring execution gap.
Big time.
50% of executives say innovation is central to their strategy, but only 8% actually implement proven innovation practices. Why is it so incredibly hard to get this right?
Because true innovation requires a rigid structural framework, not just brainstorm meetings.
Okay.
The data points to 3 specific frameworks: a portfolio approach, systematic experimentation, and external partnerships.
Let's start with the portfolio approach.
For the portfolio approach, consider Alphabet, Google's parent company. They explicitly separate their core search and advertising business from their other bets, things like their Waymo autonomous vehicles.
Right.
They operate on a strict 70-20-10 rule. 70% of investment goes to protecting the core business, 20% to adjacent markets, and 10% to transformational high-risk bets.
Smart.
It allows them to protect their cash cow while still taking massive swings at the future.
And for systematic experimentation, Intuit's model is legendary. They have a core philosophy called Design for Delight.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, but it's not just a poster on the wall. They back it up by giving their engineers 10% innovation time off to just tinker and experiment with new ideas without any pressure for immediate ROI.
That's real commitment.
They run hundreds of low-cost prototypes, and the result of giving people that freedom. By 2025, over 50% of Intuit's brand new features came directly from those rapid, safe-to-fail experiments.
Incredible. And finally, external partnerships.
Yeah.
You have to let go of the ego that says you must invent everything in-house.
Right.
Procter & Gamble's Connect Plus Develop program is the blueprint here. Over 50% of their new products incorporate external ideas.
Wow.
The Swiffer, which is one of their most iconic products, wasn't invented in an American P&G lab. It was based entirely on existing Japanese cleaning technology they found externally and adapted.
That requires such a massive shift from a closed, secretive corporate system to an open, collaborative ecosystem.
It really does.
But to operate an open ecosystem, you need a critical underlying currency, which brings us to stakeholder trust. I always thought of corporate trust as a warm, fuzzy public relations concept. Something you fix with a nice commercial.
Right.
But the data paints a very different picture, doesn't it?
What's fascinating here is that trust is a hard, measurable financial metric. The data reveals a massive 9 percentage point difference in total shareholder returns between organizations with high trust and those experiencing significant trust concerns.
9 points.
9 points. It is literally financial infrastructure. And the researchers break this down into three highly distinct domains. First, you have operational trust. This simply asks, can we physically rely on you when things go wrong?
Toyota's the perfect example of operational trust.
Yes.
During that massive global semiconductor shortage from 2021 to 2023, almost every automaker had to halt production. But Toyota survived far better than its competitors.
Because they were prepared.
Exactly. Because years earlier, they decided to maintain deeply detailed blueprints of their components and built incredible visibility into every tier of their supply chain. When a primary supplier went down, they weren't scrambling in the dark. They could pivot instantly to alternatives. They proved they were reliable in a crisis.
Then you have accountability trust.
Yeah.
This is about radical transparency, and Patagonia is the ultimate case study.
Oh, I love this example.
They publish what they call their Footprint Chronicles. It traces the environmental and social impacts of their entire supply chain.
Okay.
But what makes it radical is that they don't just highlight the good stuff. If a jacket they make causes water pollution, they don't hide it with PR. They put a label right on the website that says, we messed this up, here's the exact pollution we caused, and here's how we're trying to fix it.
That is so rare.
Paradoxically, for a consumer, admitting those flaws builds an unbreakable bond that a perfectly polished ad campaign never could.
And the third domain is digital trust, which Apple has basically built its entire modern brand on. By figuring out how to process complex AI directly on your physical iPhone, rather than sending all your personal data up to a vulnerable cloud server, they made privacy a core, highly profitable brand attribute. People buy their phones specifically because they trust the hardware.
Which brings us to perhaps the most urgent area where trust and financial reality intersect today: climate reality.
Right. And just to be clear for the listeners, we're not getting into politics here. We're just looking purely at the financial data from the report.
Exactly. Just the data. And the survey reveals a staggering blind spot in global leadership. Right now, 42% of executives openly acknowledge they face moderate to high exposure to climate-related financial losses over the coming year.
Okay.
Yet only about 20% actually have a defined process for incorporating climate considerations into their business decisions.
Wait, really?
Yeah. They clearly see the storm coming, but they refuse to fix the roof.
That is genuinely terrifying. But then you look at the companies that actually leaned into the climate pivot, and the financial rewards are unbelievable. Take Ørsted, the Danish energy company. They used to be a massive traditional fossil fuel conglomerate, but their leadership looked at the long-term climate models, looked at the future economics, and decided to completely turn their back on their core product.
A huge risk.
They spent $50 billion transitioning to offshore wind. It was a terrifying bet the company pivot. But what happened? They reduced their carbon footprint by 87%, and they delivered 15% annualized shareholder returns throughout the entire transformation. Doing the right thing for the planet was undeniably the most profitable thing for their shareholders.
We see a similar, highly profitable dynamic in agricultural supply chains.
Mm-hmm.
Unilever implemented a sustainable agriculture code for their global suppliers.
Okay.
By 2025, 63% of their agricultural raw materials were compliant with these new environmental standards. And what they discovered was incredible. Requiring climate-resilient farming practices didn't financially burden the suppliers as many feared.
Yeah.
It actually improved the physical crop yields and reduced costs. Climate action, when it is integrated as a core operational strategy, literally enhances the bottom line.
But all of this, the climate pledges, the AI integration, the supply chain overhauls, none of it actually happens without the human workforce.
True.
And right now, the data says that workforce is highly anxious. We talk a lot about generative AI, but only 14% of workers are actually using it daily.
Yeah, adoption is still low.
More concerning is that over 25% of workers are actively terrified of what this technology means for their livelihoods. If your staff is terrified, how do you successfully transform your company?
You don't unless you address that fear head on. The organizations that succeed treat technological transition as an exercise in reskilling and redeploying human talent, not an excuse to eliminate headcount.
That's a great distinction.
AT&T provides a monumental example of this. They realize their existing workforce simply lacked the skills needed for a cloud-based, AI-driven future. Rather than firing thousands of loyal employees and trying to hire expensive new talent externally, they spent $1 billion to reskill 50% of their existing workforce.
I love that. And Siemens did something very similar with their smart factories. When they brought in advanced robots to automate their manufacturing lines, they didn't just hand out pink slips.
Right.
They used the robots to automate the physically dangerous, monotonous tasks, and they took those same human workers and redeployed them to quality oversight and process optimization. They saved the jobs, made the factory significantly safer, and boosted their overall output.
You also have to manage the psychological side of massive corporate change. Salesforce does this beautifully with their 1-1-1 model.
Oh, I've heard of this.
By formally donating 1% of their equity, 1% of their product, and 1% of their employees' time to philanthropic causes, they give their workforce a tangible sense of purpose.
Yeah.
When your daily work environment feels chaotic because of endless technological shifts, having a core, meaningful purpose outside of just driving profit keeps employee engagement incredibly high.
But I have to ask, how does a CEO manage all of this without going crazy? You have AI vanguard pillars, climate pivots, massive reskilling efforts. The velocity of change seems way too high for one person sitting at the top of a traditional corporate pyramid.
It is too high. That is why the most dynamic organizations are completely dismantling that traditional pyramid. They are embracing radical agility and distributed leadership. You literally cannot run a modern company like it's 1995.
The case studies on restructuring in this research are wild. Take Hair, the massive appliance manufacturer.
Right.
They didn't just tweak their org chart, they literally broke their giant, sluggish corporate hierarchy into 4,000 autonomous microenterprises.
4,000.
Each small team operates like its own scrappy startup with direct profit and loss responsibility. They make their own decisions without waiting for approval from some distant executive.
Exactly.
Or look at Spotify. They abandoned the traditional corporate ladder entirely to organize their engineers into autonomous squads and chapters.
Netflix is another incredible example of distributed power. They democratize their internal data. They give almost every employee access to real-time performance dashboards.
Wow.
This means anyone at almost any level can spot a problem or an anomaly and fix it without waiting for a curated quarterly report to land on the CEO's desk.
That speeds things up so much.
And Capital One basically stopped acting like a traditional consumer bank. They realized the future of banking was data, so they hired a literal army of thousands of data scientists. They distributed decision-making power to the technical experts so the organization could react to consumer trends at the speed of a tech startup.
So what does this all mean? When we look at the insights from over 4,000 executives in these incredible real-world examples, a few massive themes emerge. First, dynamism always outperforms defensiveness. Retreating from a perceived threat is just a recipe for your own decline. Second, foundational infrastructure matters so much more than flashy innovation theater. You have to build the cloud servers and reskill your workers before you can revolutionize your industry. And finally, trust is not a PR campaign. Trust is a hard financial infrastructure that directly dictates your shareholder returns.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it all comes back to that brilliant initial tension between the microscope and the telescope.
Yeah.
The data is clear. The average executive is currently spending nearly half their time fighting short-term fires, staring into the microscope. But every single piece of immense value creation we just discussed, reskilling a massive workforce, pivoting a supply chain for climate resilience, integrating AI responsibly, those are all telescope activities.
They take vision.
They require long-term vision. The ultimate advice for any leader right now is that you must deliberately, aggressively protect your telescope time, even when the microscope is screaming for your attention. You have to consciously reinvent your calendar to ensure you are building the future while managing the present.
Absolutely. You have to force yourself to look up and look out. And as we wrap up today's deep dive, I want to leave you with a thought to mull over. We've talked a lot today about AI scaling, automation, and optimizing the workforce. So imagine this. If your organization, or even just your specific daily role, perfectly automated all of its core routine functions tomorrow, what distinctly human value would you actually provide to the world with the time you got back?
That's a great question.
It's a question worth asking yourself as we head into this wild future. Thank you so much for joining us and taking this deep dive with us today. We will catch you next time.